Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my brother Sharif Anael-Bey, who is going to give us a teaching education on Moorish and Islamic influence on Freemasonry. And I've been following Brother Sharif for a while, and his work is so motivating, so inspiring, and so needed in today's world. And I'm thankful for the great brother and teacher that he is. So without further ado, Islam and Assalamu alaikum to Brother Sharif.
Islam, wa alaikum assalam, brother, man. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, my brother. It's so good to have you on this platform and to basically get the vast amount of knowledge that you have accumulated over the course of your life. And the purpose of this talk that I wanted to see was what influence the Moorish and Islamic paradigm have had on Freemasonry, which the Western, let's say, Masonic authors or the esoteric people and those that are doing their programs, they refuse to address this.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's such a huge question, right? I want to first begin in the name of Allah. Praise, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of all the worlds, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible. Give honors to all true and divine prophets. I want to give give honors to Prophet Noble Drew, Savior of humanity. And I want to give honors to you, sir. I want to give honors to my leadership. My name, again, is Brother Sharif Anael-Bey. I'm a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I am the Grand Sheikh of Branch Temple number 11 of the organization in Syracuse, New York, under the leadership of Brother R. Jones Bey. I'm a founding member of a Moorish American think tank and research team called Ali's Men. And I'm honored to be able to serve, and anything of good, the praise goes to Allah. I can only take credit for the errors. So with that being said, your question is huge, brother. I mean, oh my goodness. Wow. I would begin by speaking to the narrative. There's an historical and ideological narrative that the craft preserves, protects, and propagates.
Mm-hmm.
And that narrative, is, just to jump right in. That narrative from our research and our direct experience is a preservation of the old world narrative, or the narrative of the old world Western civilization, of which new world Western civilization was founded upon. And that points to some very specific historical points. There's a gentleman by the name of James Reston Jr. He wrote a book called The Dogs of God. And in his book, he talks about a particular year in history being arguably the most important year for the United States of America. And not just world history definitely, but the United States of America in particular. And that year was 1492. Of course, people hear 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But 2 months prior, James Reston Jr. was talking about 2 months prior. He was talking about the fall at Granada and the capitulation of a nearly 800-year Muslim rule over Europe, ending at the fall of Granada. And so, that just to begin, or just as a starting point, that, the events surrounding that point in time is very significant, and we can see, or there are a number of very powerful points that the craft preserves and propagates relative to that point in time.
That's so interesting, Brother Sharif, that you mentioned that, because if you really look at the Moorish history and what I've seen with the teachings and the Kingdom of Hawaii, if you look at the old banner, it has two Moors with the red fezzes holding the banner, and Hawaii
Absolutely.
being the only state in the Union
Yes.
that has an Islam day. So
Yes.
that fascinated me, that all of the stuff that was here Then you have the influence upon the Shriners, the Sufi influence,
Absolutely.
and how the Knights Templar were studying with the Sufis and the Moors in the Holy Land. Then
Correct.
it goes to the connection with the Knights Templar, how the
Yes.
one of their great founders was a Moorish Sufi. So
That's correct.
what is it that we are not being taught about, like that influence and not being given credit to the proper sources?
It's so powerful, that even that question, and I want to, even the way we think. See,
Mhm.
like when we talk about New World Western civilization, we're
Mhm.
talking about a worldview of how we think collectively. So even when we talk about religious creed today, it's totally different than it was in the old world, although there's remnants of it, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But here in the new world, or in the present worldview, we see religion as something we do. We see it as a hobby. It's almost secularized in some respects, right? Whereas in the old world, it was part of your identity politics, a very solid part of identity politics. And so, and what shaped everyday thought. For instance, we all know people that have never stepped foot in a church, ever, but fully believe that when they die, they're going to a hell or a heaven as taught in the Christian church.
Right.
See? So when we say religious creed, we're not talking about how the average individual in the West sees religion today. We're talking about what has already shaped the worldview.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And so that's extremely important. So, because when we say religious creed, people started immediately thinking, oh, what church you belong to, what mosque, what mosque do you attend, or what synagogue. No. We're talking about what shapes your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so regardless, and let's just be honest, regardless of what our faith tradition is nowadays, many of us are still thinking with the Euro-Christian narrative.
Thank you.
And so, like, going back to history, 1477, 1478, you had Torquemada with La Hermandad and the Spanish Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of the Spanish Inquisition was to physically enforce the ideological war, to end how the people at that time were thinking in Europe and in Spain. You see? And so it wasn't just enough to physically remove the rulers. You had to eradicate the way of thinking. You couldn't even think during those days without considering the torture racks and the fires of the Holy Office. Mm-hmm. And we have that today with people thinking, oh, they see a pyramid and an all-seeing eye on the back of a dollar bill. Oh, it's satanic. Oh, that's devil worship. No, that's Inquisitionist thinking. And so that affects us even to this day. And so these are the things that, in my opinion, brothers in the craft, without violating anything, we need to speak more to these things. Mm-hmm. You see, this is the value of the Moorish Science Temple of America, because some of these things were given, not some, a lot of these things are given to where we can practice it openly as part of our religious creed. You see, like, for instance, we're all very familiar with the Hiramic legend. We were familiar, this is in books or anything, so it's not going crazy about, but we're familiar with the term sons of a widow. We're very familiar with that. But we know that in the Bible, Hiram, he wasn't, we know the legend. Yes. But that the part of the legend where Hiram is martyred is not in the Bible. So the question now becomes, where do we get the phrase son of a widow from, actually? And a number of Masonic scholars have concluded that the craft borrowed that from the story of Ruth Moabitess. Mm-hmm. Right? Have borrowed that story from Ruth the Moabitess. Why? Ruth, as we know the story of Ruth marries Boaz, or Boaz takes her hand in marriage, right? Yeah. Because of her fidelity. But he doesn't survive the consummation of the marriage. He was an old man. So all of her children were considered sons of the widow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now we go back to the Hiramic legend where the body was, hastily covered, in the northwest corner of the unfinished edifice. So in the questionnaire, in the Quran questionnaire of the Moorish Science Temple of America, there's a series of questions. It's for children. It says, what is the nationality of Ruth? Ruth was a Moabitess. What is the modern name for Moabites? Moroccans. Where is the Moroccan Empire? Northwest of Mexico. This rings bells and whistles should go off for any man or woman, man of the craft when they hear that. You see?
Yes, Brother Sharif, that's absolutely correct, because even myself, I didn't know this information in all of my years of studying the craft and comparing it to different religions and philosophies.
Yes,
What the Moorish Science Temple of America and what the Moorish knowledge has taught us is indeed realizing is that, okay, all of this knowledge was here in terms of the Northwest of Mexican Empire and the Moors already being here before anybody else and the indigenous peoples of the world. So why are we taught this version of history? But then you pointed out, and that is that Inquisition thinking, which has been branded into our minds. When we look at the eye of Allah on the back of the dollar bill, we think that it's evil. But in the Holy Quran and the 99 names of Allah, one of the names is Al-Basir, the all-seeing, all-knowing.
That's right.
It's not evil, and I thank you for what you have pointed out, my brother. It's truly appreciated. Please continue.
Yes, sir. It's again, it's so amazing. The way that let's go back. Let's go back to the time surrounding our forefathers' fall in Spain. It couldn't have happened without our help. It could not have happened without our help. We all know, and anyone, especially in the Western occult tradition or the Western esoteric tradition, the Western magical revival, are very familiar with the fact that while on the surface you had Christian knights and Muslim knights fighting during the Crusades. Mm-hmm. There was an undercurrent of cross-cultural pollination, an undercurrent where the Muslims were sharing information, right? Which of course led to issues between the church and the Templars, and we all know the rest of that as well. But that was done for a number of reasons, but to preserve the old world culture. What we see today in looking at it properly or looking at it with a particular scope in the Western magical tradition, in the occult tradition, the esoteric tradition, in Hermetics, in Kabbalah, you see old world learning, higher learning taught, half concealed, half revealed, to protect it for a particular point in time, to return it at a particular point in time. And returning doesn't necessarily mean physical. Returning means this now has to become the mainstream again, the mainstream thought. You see, it's no longer, don't keep it secret. Now it's when the time is appointed by Allah, loosen the keys and free the secrets. You see, now these thoughts are seeded into the minds of the masses and becomes, knowing this, it should be no surprise to us at all that New Age thought is literally based on this.
That's exactly right.
You see, and New Age thought, the responsible side of New Age thought, is the new norm. Is the new, it's religionists would call it post-hereafter thinking. Mm-hmm. People in the intelligence community would call it post-disclosure civilization. Mm-hmm. How about that? Where and now you got the Pope acknowledging what the Quran has taught us, that there's different worlds, there's various worlds, mm-hmm. various realms of experience, and each one of them's inhabited. Now you have the intelligence community You have insiders from the intelligence community opening up and saying, yes, what people popularly know as extraterrestrials are more properly called ultra-terrestrial.
Mm-hmm.
Beings from different planes of existence. And and one of the biggest questions when it comes to disclosure with various governments of the world now is how do we break it to the masses without civilization exploding on us? And some of the greatest or the key elements that they have to address is, guess what? Religious creed, because it shapes worldview. So now the question is, what religious creeds can support the new ideas that we're keeping secret?
That is absolutely true, because it's funny. A few years ago, I was with one of my Moorish brothers here in Philadelphia, and they were talking about we have to raise our vibration so the aliens and the people can come and visit us. And my Moorish brother started laughing. He said, "They're already here. You just don't have the eyes and the heart to see it."
Come on.
That that reminded me of Imam Jafar al-Sadiq from the Sufi Islamic tradition, and he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created many worlds like this, like the one that we're in, and each one of them thinking that they alone are the inhabitants of that world.
Isn't that something?
You exactly hit the nail right on the head. No one will talk about this.
See, this is it. The people in the intelligence community and sociologists that are aware of this will speak to, well, okay, what will the new religion look like? The new religion will have to embrace these new realities that we have yet to make known to the public, but some people already know. It's like, well, what we're really doing is making a return to the old time religion. Mm-hmm. The old time, our forefathers, this was common knowledge. These are the things that had to be suppressed so that a particular worldview could have its run for a few hundred years.
Right.
And
absolutely right.
And what we're seeing now, socially, is the end. We're seeing the end of it, just like James Reston Jr.'s book is so powerful. He talked about, during that time period, the Euro Christians that were fighting during the Reconquista for regain control of Europe. At a particular point in time, they realized that the wind behind their back was so strong, they had to admit that it was not by their own hand. When think about it like this, look how powerful this is. In the age in world history of kingdoms, empires, and dominions, the very first modern nation state in the world was Spain. When Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile married, two kingdoms together, boom, now you have the first modern nation state in the world, Spain. And they did it for the purpose of ousting the Moors out of Spain. The Europeans at that time literally called, according to James Reston's book, the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella, they called it the second coming of Christ. Whew. They say, conversely, the Muslims called it the end of the age. This is amazing stuff. What we're starting to see now in America with the turmoil and social turmoil in America, which interestingly is centered around the race question, right?
Yes.
What we are seeing is that same energy in reverse. We're seeing the same thing in reverse. We're seeing a return back to the old ways. That's what we're seeing. It's amazing. We live in an amazing time right now. Not an easy time, but an amazing time right now.
Brother Sharif, what you have laid out is absolutely so important, because you have those that plan, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also the best of all planners.
Best of planners, brother.
So the original paradigm is on its way back, and I see it week by week, day by day, year by year. All of that paradigm consciously is being shifted back, where the people are realizing and they're looking at the system around them like, what's going on? And how can I change this back to how it used to be? Now, even Hollywood is kind of showing you the truth, what they show you in the John Wick movie,
Come
where
on.
he goes to Morocco and he finds out the person running everything was a Moor in Morocco. So
Come on. That's right. It's again, we live in an amazing time, but now, like as it relates to the Moorish Science Symbol of America,
yes.
the founder of the organization, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the focus for the members was not so much the acquisition of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
No, the focus for the members was to get right by God, right? Get right with Allah, right? Is to, he said, there's a quote from him, renew your acts and amend your ways. Mm-hmm. In other words, we can't point yet the finger at anybody outside of us until we fix us. Mm-hmm. You see? And so the first, well, there's a number of places we can go with that. But in other words, as it relates to like what we're talking about coming, that we see the change, and it's going to be very wonderful. What's our place in it? Well, the sword in the hands of a fool is, right? We have to qualify ourselves. How do we qualify ourselves? We utilize that compass in that square, right? Mm-hmm. We use the square to measure all of our lines, straighten out the crooked places of the way, make the corners of our conduct square. See? It comes to draw circles around our passions, right? Keep them within the bounds of righteousness. Well, what is the square? What is that really? Discipline. Mm-hmm. See? What is that compass? Conscience. Then the jewel pops out from between them with right action. You know what I mean? And so, what happens with us a lot of times is because we've been so powerless, our people, the people that have been called Negro, Black, colored, African-American, that, knowledge is power, sure, but we mistake information for knowledge. Mm-hmm. You see, we mistake information for knowledge, and we get some information, we think we're strong, and then what do? We start firing off at each other. It's like, no. Noble Drew Ali said you have to give up the names and the principles that delude to slavery. You see? And so many of us have given up the name, in the organization, in the movement, have given up the names, but not yet the principles. We still have to have work to do on ourselves. But it's no different. Human weakness is human weakness, no matter where you are, right? You've got members in the craft that have gone all the way up. But if you look at their life, they haven't gotten past EA.
That's absolutely true. And I thank you, my brother, for sharing that about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And yes, even in the Holy Quran, Surah Baqarah, the second surah, the last two verses, it prophesizes all of these great teachers and guides that were here to, even after the time of the Prophet Muhammad, that there will be, they make no distinguish between messengers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that all of these teachers and guides will come and reiterate the same message. Yes. And there is no distinguishment between any of them.
That's right.
What he taught us is to stand on our square and also to basically circumscribe your desires. And the greatest thing that I learned from Prophet Noble Drew Ali is basically the greatest enemy that you have is yourself. The greatest friend you have is yourself. So you must straighten yourself out. And that is a great message that you're sharing with our Moorish brothers and sisters all over the world, is you need to make sure that you're sculpting your rough ashlar into a smooth ashlar day
Come
by
on.
day.
That's right. That's right. And what better example than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself? What better example of the perfect ashlar? You see? And it's, in Surah Al-Baqarah, right? to the point of Prophet Drew Ali teaching us, if man would look for his savior is within. Mm-hmm. If you look for his devil's there too, right?
Yes.
When Allah says to the angels, I'm going to create Khalifa in the earth, generations after generations. They said, well, what would you do but cause mischief and something that would cause mischief in the shedding of blood? And of course, he says, I know what you know not. Mm-hmm. Then he creates the man. He creates Adam, teaches him the names of everything in creation, then brings all the creation in front of him, including the angels, and tells the angels, tell me your names if you're truthful. They say, we know not. We only know what you told us. And then Allah tells the man, inform them of their names. Whew, that's so powerful. Then has all of creation bow to the man.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not to make us proud or haughty or arrogant. We have in our literature, we say there is no failure for the human soul, for Allah is leading on and victory is sure. Now, of course, that sounds off the surface great, but guess what? It puts all the responsibility on us now. And it's like we're not escaping our lessons. We're not escaping the things that we have to learn. You know, if you don't get it this time, it's going to come back around. But there's no failure for the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
No failure, meaning you're not going to get the opportunity to fail. That means it's within the power of man to succeed. It's within the power of man to be the strength of Allah made manifest. So if the greatest of human is to be immutable, that means it's possible that man can be immutable.
That's absolutely right, because in the Sufi teachings, what I was looking at from Baba Muhyiddin and Ibn Arabi,
Yes.
and all these great teachers, and the only thing that I hear them saying is only Allah can worship Allah. And I asked them, and I tried to find out, what does that mean? So a lot of the Sufi masters that I spoke to, they said that you have been basically deputized to be the representative of Allah on this earth. And that doesn't mean, like you said, that you have to be proud or arrogant. You have been burdened with this huge responsibility to make things right for the earth, for yourself, for your people. And, you know, in these times of chaos, my hats are off, my brother, to yourself as the Grand Sheikh, and to all of those that are leaders and basically teachers and guides in this time. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that without a guide, if you don't have a guide in this world, the shaitan is your guide.
That's your guide.
So what you're doing as the Grand Sheikh is so powerful. And that's something that I see in Masonry as well. You need a guide and a mentor.
We need a guide, you know, and again, I can only take credit for the mistakes. You know, I've been in the presence of great men and great teachers. You know, again, my leadership, Brother R. Jones Bey, you know, he is an incredibly spiritual man, you know, and when I say spiritual, you know, as in, you know, spiritually accomplished, and being a man of the craft, you understand exactly what that means, you know, and so, again, I'm fortunate, and my brothers are also, we're fortunate to be able to stand on the shoulders of giants, you know, with that. So that makes things easier for us. One of the things, you know, as you already know, you know, the Moorish Science Symbol of America is a spiritual organization, but also cultural heritage organization and civic organization. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, and as you know, Islamic thinking, in the truest sense, recognizes no duality. We say, Kul huwallahu ahad, right? Not he's one God, Allah is one. You know, big difference. And so we don't recognize duality. We recognize polarity, sure, mm-hmm. but not duality. So, you know, our Islam permeates cultural heritage and civic duty as citizens, as American citizens as well. Mm-hmm. You know, and not proselytizing at a religious practice. No, the principle of unity. One of the greatest examples of this idea, this way of thinking, which is a throwback to why European and even Christian scholars writing about the time period where the Muslims ruled Spain lauded the Moors for religious tolerance. I'm a martial artist by trade, and I do this professionally. And years ago, we were with our instructor, and we were at a public event, and this guy was demonstrating. He wasn't so good. And so we're half trying to impress my instructor, then also too proud of the fact that we could point out what was wrong. So we're pointing out everything. Oh, this is wrong. 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 My instructor just sat and listened and watched. At the end, when we tired ourselves out about it, he goes, yeah, he did a lot of things bad. He goes, out of 100 things, 99 of them were bad. I'm going to steal the one good thing. And he walked away. He made us feel like fools, right? That is Islamic thinking.
Yes.
We may disagree out of 100 things, 99 things, but we could join hands and enter the house of labor on the one thing that we agree on.
That is absolutely right, my brother, because looking through the Holy Quran, if you look at Surah 2, verse 62, it tells you that it doesn't matter if you're a Jew, Christian, or Muslim.
Come on.
As long as you believe in Allah and do the right thing, then on the day of judgment, you shall have no grief. And same thing in Surah 49, verse 10, that mankind, everyone, we're believers, and the believers are but one brotherhood. So make peace between your brothers. So Islam and the rule of the Moors is so tolerant, and it makes sense that for old paradigm coming back, it will be the Moors again who will teach that tolerance and unity and brotherhood back to the people who have wandered away to the West and are lost in darkness, to have them come back to the East.
And look at it, and wow, from the sociological perspective, right? Look who Noble Drew Ali came to. The people that had name a people in the history of humanity that have ever been called the dead people.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I mean, you've had in the course of human history bloodshed and all kinds of things in warfare where whole civilizations have been wiped off the map, but never a whole community's soul ripped out of them and leaving just their body. When you wipe the collective memory of a nation of people, the technical term of that is ethnocide. And it's defined as you killed their soul. So they don't remember who they were. And as well as I do in the Quran, we talk about, man, forgetfulness is the tool of Iblis himself.
That's right.
Yeah. So imagine what you just said about these things: religious tolerance, the 5 highest principles known to man: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, being taught universally in all lands to all people, coming from the people who were, as the book of Revelation says, that looked as if they had been slain since the foundations of the earth. In other words, all we know about these people is that they're dead. Black people. Black, according to science, means death. What science? There's a couple of them, but one in particular, sociology, right? Red, according to the science of sociology, means stop. Green, according to science of sociology, means go. White means purity. Black means death. You see?
It's interesting, Brother Sharif, because coming from Pakistan, and that country before 1947 used to be a part of India, known as Hindustan. And
that's right.
If you look at the history, there is a certain part of Pakistani and Indian history that's suppressed. And what is it? It's the rule of the Moors, the African kings that had ruled Hindustan for all this time. And when I went to the city of Karachi, I saw the descendants of the indigenous Moors that were still there. And they were very, very kind people, dark skin, bronze skin, curly hair. And the women were very nice, the families, the men, very nice and tolerant people, talking about love, unity, justice, all those principles of Moorish foundation. And I'm thinking, do the people in America even know that these people exist, and the remnants of the Moors that are still there all over the world? And it blew my mind, but it also taught me that nothing in this world, it works the way that we think that it does, especially what we've been taught.
That's a fact. Now, another part of our cultural heritage that's taught in the Moorish science symbol of America, Prophet Drew Ali said it this way. He said, through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact they honor not the creative principles of their forefathers, right? That being said, that's not to belittle what took place or what happened to us, but it's to put it in the proper focus, right? I heard Minister Louis Farrakhan say this to someone in a public venue years ago. He said somebody had said something to him about slavery, and he retorted with, The real question you have to ask yourself is, why did Allah see it necessary for us to go through what we went through? Woo! So when you were speaking about the brothers and sisters in Karachi,
Yes.
the thought that came to my mind was, we are in the last stages of punishment and repentance.
Mm-hmm.
That's all part of the alchemical process. The first stage is disillusion, where you have to break the ego down to where it's malleable again. And
Yep.
and the Latin phrase for the disillusion in the alchemical process is negredo, or blackness. See, we're at the end stages of that, to where you have nothing left but to be humble. Which means at a particular point in time, our hearts were fixed, and we were very arrogant, and we were very headstrong. You see, that's what took place during the latter half of the Moorish rule in Spain and in Europe. And then we began to fight each other. And then, and so there's a reason why we went through what we went through. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens with a lot of our people, because we don't know that history, and ignorance, breeds all kinds of things, we tend to romanticize. So we'll go from, hey, we built pyramids and we did all this other stuff, to we were just innocent and these people did this to us. No. We have to embrace all sides of the historical truth. Mm-hmm. We have to embrace it. We have to embrace the fact that what happened to us, we did to Europeans too. And first, there's a book by a man named Ray Irwin. The book is called The Diplomatic Relations Between the United States and the Barbary Powers. Mm-hmm. He talks about how our forefathers depopulated whole islands in Great Britain for slaves.
And that's interesting, because when I was looking at the history of England, they had the kings of England known as the Moors of England. Yes. And they even portray that in the Assassin's Creed game, the new one.
Yes, they do.
where you go to the village settlement, and there's a young Moorish kid that's sitting there, and he tells the main character that it's us that are running the trade and the commerce of this empire, and it's us that are running everything. So, and he gives them like missions to do. You go out and collect stuff and go out and do contracts. So all of that history is there, and they even portrayed that in the Black Knight movie with Martin Lawrence, how they how they viewed him in such high regard.
That's right. There's very powerful 2-book series called Ancient and Modern Britons by David McCritchie. Yes. Incredible books. And so it highlights that part of British history with so much detail. Mm-hmm. Like an incredible amount of detail. Jack Forbes in his book of Africans and Native Americans, he speaks to that a little bit as well in his book. But again, what's most important, for us, identity has to be returned, right? Identity has to be returned. People come from places, not crayon boxes. People come from places. Now, interestingly, we put together, based on Noble Drew Ali's teachings, we put together a DEI platform, a diversity, equity, and inclusion platform, that we're just about to do a hard launch on, that we call Race Nonconformity. Mm-hmm. If, just real simply put, if an individual can go to work tomorrow and say, you know what, I'm no longer, you have to call me she. You have to use the pronoun she now for me. And it's respected, then I should have no problem going to the workforce saying, don't call me Black. Don't call me something culturally ambiguous like African American. There are 54 nations on that continent. I come from someplace. I'm a contributor to American society, just like the German Americans, just like the Japanese Americans. I'm a contributor, and calling me anything other than what I am, it does a number of things. One of the main things it does is that it relegates me to being a descendant of a product of American commerce.
That's
instead of a
right.
descendant of a contributor to American society. And this is what our people are suffering from today, not residue from slavery. We are suffering from a very real identity crisis. That's what we're suffering from.
And Sheikh, that is absolutely correct, because you have the aspect of reclaiming your identity,
Yes,
and basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, and the teachings of both the prophets Muhammad and Noble Drew Ali, peace be upon them both. And
yes,
it tells us that you must reclaim your sovereignty. You must reclaim the aspects of who you are, what you stand for, be a protector of your land, be a protector of your family.
yes,
So that identity crisis that many of our Moorish brothers and sisters have fallen under is
yes,
exactly what needs to be addressed. If anybody can go and say, now I claim to be this, this, and this, and it's respected, then why not for the Moorish brothers and sisters? They have all the rights in the world to say, don't call me black. If you look at the etymology of the Black's Law Dictionary of that word, it basically, just like you said, without a soul, death.
come
And you
on,
have
come on.
all of these words like blackmail and blackballed and all that stuff that
That's right.
associates it with negative connotations.
There you
So
go.
the Moorish
There you
brothers and
go.
sisters have every right to reclaim
Yes.
their sovereign due rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to every man, woman, and child on this earth.
Now, I want to take this point to address a very serious issue, right? A very serious issue within the Moorish movement, and within the Moorish movement, right? Prophet Noble Drew Ali, I give you a couple things, piece of history. The mission statement of the organization is to uplift fallen humanity and to teach our people the things that make better citizens out of men and women. In the year 1928, now this is 1928, long before the Civil Rights Act of 1965. 1928, the very first in the state of Illinois, the very first quote unquote African American elected to Congress since Reconstruction took place that year. And the man won, his name was Oscar DePriest. He won because Prophet Noble Drew Ali organized a vote block of over 3,000 members of the organization to vote him into office. The point being is this. The organization aggressively pushes civic inclusion and participation in the American experience. Not separation. Now, let me add this to that. Assimilation. I'm not saying assimilation, right? Because absent having your national, here we go, core American values. Core American values are this. Prior to the New World, citizenship in a nation was strongly based on ethnicity and blood. To be an Italian citizen, I gotta be Italian. But in the New World, right, the slogan, e pluribus unum, out of many one. Now the prerequisite is that you have to adopt an idea. The idea is that one nation can be formed by consisting of people from many different old world connections. So what is the prerequisite? What's your old world connection?
That's it.
Is this a legal prerequisite? No, it's a social prerequisite. That's why you don't see it written in any laws. There is no law that makes you a citizen. If there was, you'd have to ask the question, what law made the founding fathers citizens? None. See, the law comes out of politics trumps the law. Sociology trumps politics. See, so it was a social compact. It's a social, like people call the American compact, the American social compact, right? It's a social compact. The basis of it is where you come from. If you don't say, or if you can't say, then as I'm quoting Noble Drew Ali, you are subject to any inferior name, mistreatment, and abuse that citizens care to bestow upon you. So there was a time where we had met that standard, and then we fell from it. Then history is rewritten to make it sound as if we never met the standard.
That's absolutely right.
as if all of us came here enslaved.
And you know what you pointed out, Grant Sheik, is basically the aspect of the founding fathers of this country. They were deists. They wanted to accept everyone. And if you look at the first country that recognized America, it was Morocco.
It
If
was
you look at
Morocco.
George Washington's letter to the Sultan of Morocco, thanking him for his imperial majesty for giving control over his dominions. So
Yes.
what is it that we are not being taught? And you look at the U.S. Army logo, you even see the Phrygian cap, the
Come
red fez of
on.
freedom. It's all
Yes.
there. And that
Well,
comes to my question about the words free and accepted and all that stuff, and how the Moors are tied into the freedom
well,
here.
this ideological war came across the ocean.
Mm,
It's so you know this very well, being a traveling man, right? The whole American experiment of separation of church and state came out of the craft.
yes.
Okay, but now watch this. You have a people in the craft that believe that this is a Christian nation.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that something?
That is definitely something.
That is the old world wartime conceit from Spain continued today.
Mm-hmm.
That is why when your religious creed determines your identity politics, this is why today the alternative right, no matter what atrocities Trump does, will call him a good Christian.
That's right.
And no matter how much khanzir Obama eats, they'll call him a good Muslim. Or not a good one, they'll call him a Muslim.
Yep.
You see? That's why. Because they're still operating by those same old world rules. They're still operating by them, which means there's a book called Steve Bannon, Donald Trump and the Storming of the White House. And it talks about Steve Bannon's upbringing in college, his education. And basically, I'm paraphrasing it. In the book, it says that he learned Western history from the perspective of Roman Catholicism.
Mm.
And his classmate said this, and I'm quoting him. He said, "We learned that Western civilization was saved in Spain when we defeated the Moors." In other words, this stuff is still shaping how they think today.
To this very day, and it's absolutely fascinating, Sheikh, that you point that out.
To this very day.
And it's so interesting because when you look at how you have this aspect of Thomas Jefferson having the Quran, and you have Obama when he went to Cairo saying
Yes.
America was shaped from Muslim law, you have the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, depicted outside of the U.S. Supreme Court as a great lawgiver. So
that's a fact.
All of it is already there, and people think when they look at a Muslim person or anyone that's like from the non-white paradigm, they would say this is a Judeo-Christian civilization. It was never, because the founding fathers were brethren of the craft, and they shaped this nation to those values of the craft, meaning everyone and anything was welcome, which comes originally from Moorish science. It was taught by the Moors.
That now to that point, let's go back to core American values. If core American values, the prerequisite to answer the social standard, to answer up to the constitutional standard, is you have to say where you're from.
Yeah.
That means every American citizen has two flags. Flag of your birth, which is the Star-Spangled Banner. The flag of your origin. What is your old world connection, right? Okay. Race does not factor in. So this whole race thing, which we know what it is, it's a caste system operating in the open. That's just what it is. It's a caste system, right? The race thing hijacked core American values, brother. And if we look at it from that perspective and look at the alchemical process that America is socially, I dare say we 200 some odd years later haven't seen a true American yet. It's in the process.
That is absolutely right, because it's so interesting what you point out about the race system. Because I had friends from like Middle Eastern backgrounds, like from Egypt and from
Yes,
Lebanon and from the Arab world. And I said,
yes,
what do you check on the census when you apply for a job or you check off the other stuff? They said, I check white because as a Middle Eastern, yeah, I might be a dark-skinned Middle Easterner from like Egypt or wherever else, but on the census, I'm still classified as a white individual. So
yeah.
where does all that come in
I
terms
can
of
tell
the
you,
identity?
we do workshops on this.
Uh-huh.
We do literal workshops on this, and the American Anthropological Association speaks to this very in great detail. Here we go. It's all based on Euro-colonialist revisionist history. There's something you should look up called, there's a social scientist, his name was Charles Seligman,
Mm.
Seligman, Charles Seligman.
So,
Charles Seligman was one of these, revisionist, social scientists
mhm.
who had, again, their whole objective was explaining sociology and anthropology and, in a way that supported manifest destiny, in a way that supported, Euro-colonialism. So what did they do? For right off top, these people that we call Negroes in no shape, form, or fashion are capable of civilization.
Mm.
So what do you think they thought when they saw the pyramids in Sudan and the pyramids in Egypt and then, the great castles in the Congo? What do you think they're like, oh my God, we have to come up with to explain this. Literally, they came up with something called the Hamitic hypothesis.
Mm.
They said, these aren't Negroes. These are dark-skinned Caucasians. These are pastoral Europeans. These are Euro-Africans. And then they came up with the whole falsity that the true Negro is the sub-Saharan African.
Mm.
So anything above the Sahara isn't African at all. And so literally the race classification used in America, right? What's called Federal Directive 15. That's what it's called. From the Office of Management and Budget is literally based on what I just told you.
Wow.
So here's the definitions given. Listen to this. In the Federal Directive 15, the definition for Black, a member of any of the Black racial groups of Africa. What in the world does that mean? How do you use the word you're defining in your definition? White, here's the definition. Ready? A member of any of the original inhabitants of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. You see how crazy that is?
It's right there in front of you, but people
Right
just
in
don't
front of
have the eyes to see it. And I thank you, Grant Sheikh, for explaining
you. Yes,
what
sir.
you have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's now so it's almost, well, in the world of sociology, it's laughable.
Mm.
But in the mainstream, it's still a solid part of society. You see? And so the American Anthropological Association wrote a paper on its response to Federal Directive 15. And it agreed with the United Nations. It said race is a myth. Mm-hmm. The color code system of race is a myth. It doesn't exist. And said that it was created by a European majority to keep themselves on top and everybody else on the bottom. Well, you can't have a permanent upper class without having a permanent lower class.
Yes.
You see? And that, so there can be no white supremacy without a Black identity. That being said, if the whole caste system, white here, Black here, exists to keep white here, that means and this has nothing to do with whether you hate people or whether you're a bad person, it has nothing to do with that at all. We're talking sociology here. If you identify as white, you're a white supremacist. Mm-hmm. If you identify as Black, you're a white supremacist. Because both positions are needed to support the caste system.
Exactly. And it's like a house of cards. If one card comes out, the entire thing will fall.
The
like
whole
dominoes.
thing does. Hence our DEI platform, race nonconformity. I choose not to play the game.
And that's it. Because if you choose not to participate with your energy, then that system doesn't exist anymore. And, in terms of the white supremacy, Sheikh, I go to my next question is like
Yes,
when
sir.
you look at the origins of the craft, what we know of it as today, why
Yes.
are, let's say, African mystery schools, Sufi Moorish mystery schools, things that existed way before 1717 are not
Yes.
given credit, but of course they always want to give credit to Pythagoras and Rome and all that stuff. Why
It
not those people that were already there for thousands of years?
well, because again, we have an overreaching narrative that was forced on our forefathers and mothers
Yes.
to think a particular way. And so this is the part that we're missing, right? The story, for instance, of cowboys and Indians would be totally different if the Indians were telling the story.
Exactly.
So the big secret is narrative, right? So we can think about it like this. I sit with my wife and we watch a lot of different shows, and they'll talk about, for instance, Pythagoras. Pythagoras, first thing they'll mention, yeah, Pythagoras traveled to Egypt and learned in Egypt. Then they'll say he was walking through the woods one day and heard these insects singing, and he started thinking of mathematical ratios and harmonics between. Really? And nobody catches that. Or they'll say things like, yeah, we found, archaeologists found this particular artifact that proves that these people knew that the earth was round 1,000 years before it was discovered. Wait a minute. What do you mean 1,000 years before it was discovered? What does that even mean? You see my point? And that can be said as if it's intelligent and flies right over everybody's head, and they go, yep, wow, that's interesting. And nobody catches what's actually being said. What's actually being said is before the European worldview recognized it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the start of where we are counting time. So it's a mystery relative to where we are as rulers in the world and rulers of thought. You see? In other words, that's an interesting anomaly. It's an anomaly because the world is right here, starting 1492, or more specifically 1442 with the writing of Ilias Qa, right? By the Pope Eugene IV. So our world starts right here. Anything before that, it's an interesting curiosity. You see? And to your point, brother, about Pythagoras, powerful. The Euro-West grabbed and appropriated and took ownership of ancient Greek culture.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time acknowledges that it was the Moors that resurrected ancient Greek culture and made it available to the West.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if you look at the 7 liberal arts, the astronomy and all that stuff, all of those are Arabic names.
All of them.
Coming from Muslim lawgivers and those that were Muslim members of the craft. At that time, they were the ones that were doing everything in terms of the teaching and doing the right thing. And I look at these old Sufi paintings, Sheikh, at these old Moorish Sufi paintings, and I see the plumb, I see the level, the square, the hourglass, the compass, and I'm thinking, who is claiming that none of this existed before 1717?
Before 1717, right?
there it is.
It's the dogged adherence and holding on to a narrative that's pretty much dying.
Yeah. Nobody believes it anymore.
There you go. It's dying. It's losing power. It had a point in time, especially in America, where it was at the top of the food chain. It was when America was at the top of the food chain, right after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Governor-elect Talmadge, 1946 Meet the Press radio show. He was governor-elect of Georgia that year. He was also a big KKK man. But America and that way of thinking was top of the food chain.
Yes.
So he could speak very brazenly. So when asked about the Negro problem, he says, the Negro is living a 150-year-old artificial history that prevents him from equal recognition and respect in American society.
Mhm.
Wow. He was that bold to say it. He's right. But of course, what he doesn't say is, but to enforce this artificial history, we had to waylay our own people with the same artificial history so they would believe it too.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And it's so funny because everything does indeed come full circle. And
Yes.
I was talking with one of my Sufi brothers the other day, and he was telling me that Allah, in his grand scheme of things, he's also very humorous in terms of how he like brings everything around. Where you're
Isn't that
thinking
something?
that I'm going through something and you're feeling bad about stuff and you're letting the emotion of the moment get the best of you. But
Right.
what we see right now is Allah's humorous plan and how we're seeing the end of this global white hegemony supremacy that is ending, and everyone kind of waking up, the light bulbs are turning on and everyone's coming together, which goes to my next question, Grant Sheik,
Yes, sir.
is
Yes, sir.
in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, how
Yes.
which direction is the Moorish American community going in terms of reclaiming their identity and standing back up on their square?
We have to, we really, really, really have to, the work is on ourselves.
Yes.
The work is on ourselves. We have to really, really get busy broadcasting. And I don't mean proselytizing.
Mhm.
I mean living the life, right? Being the embodiment of, sign, pass, token of the past, and the perfect points of my entrance.
Mhm.
Watch what I do. I want to show you the character and the quality of the character of a Moorish American, right? I don't want to just look like one with a fez and a turban on, but you're seeing the same untrustworthiness, the same wishy-washiness, the same lukewarmish thing that you would see with people who did not have their identity and have the purpose that goes hand in hand with identity. You see what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So we want to live that, and see, because the other thing, like you said, the whole hegemony is crumbling around our ears.
Mhm.
It's crumbling around our ears. So there has to be a new order that people can put their feet firmly on.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? And so we have to work because we have the tools. Prophet Jarali brought them to us. So we have to work to be the embodiment of that new solid floor foundation, that new master's carpet, that civilization can stand on. So you know what? I can depend on that guy. You know what? I
Definitely.
can depend on her. I can depend on them. Look at what they've been through, and they still have that level of integrity and that level of uprightness. Look at what they've been through.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? That I think is what has to really, we have to really exude is that, because again, just like the Europeans during the end of the Reconquista, the wind was behind their back for the change. The winds of change are at our back. It's going to happen whether we do something or sit on our hands. And if we sit on our hands, everything's going to crumble around us too. It's bad when you've got Virginia, Florida, Texas legislation that's being vigorously pushed to say you can't teach about racism if it makes me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that is? Some of our people are alarmed and upset. I'm not upset about it at all.
That's
You know what that is, brother?
Critical race theory, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's that lamb caught in the jaws of the lion that's, doing its last little, shakes before that. That's what that is.
Yes.
Don't make me feel uncomfortable with my own truth. And you want to pass legislation? That means it's over. It really is over.
Exactly. I mean, you look at every organization, Grant Sheikh, that I looked at, whether it's the craft and the whole 1717 origin story, or whether it's the critical race theory situation we're dealing with, or this fall of this global white hegemony and supremacy that has for hundreds of years killed thousands and millions of Black and brown people in the world.
That's fact.
And I see that over time, this is going down, down, down. And it's so important right now for the Moorish brothers and sisters, especially the family, the man, woman, and child, to stick with each other and lead by example. As it says in the Quran, Bismillah Rahman Rahim, Rahman and Rahim being the masculine and feminine, the androgynous energy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that if the Moorish brothers and sisters and their families and children stick together and lead by example, then there will be nobody outside coming from other communities coming to police you. You're building your own communities.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I got it, brother. You know, one of the most important things in our laws, we have in the organization, we have a constitution, divine constitution of bylaws. One of the most important things we're given is in the Act 7 of that. It says, all members must promptly attend their meetings, become a part and parcel of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science System of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science System of America. Then you're entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity.
Yes.
You know, you hit it right on the nose. You hit it right on the nose, how we relate to each other. Man and woman and child. Family is the family unit. That is the greatest social program ever. The family tree.
Alhamdulillah. And that is the reason why our Moorish brothers and sisters in this country, what I've seen, have been attacked so much, where the men and the women have been pit against each other. And I see like, you know what, there is some kind of a agenda that has been played against them and how they've been demonized and pit against each other.
It's the truth.
And it goes to my next question, Sheikh. What is the Moorish influence upon the Shriners that they don't admit? Because I see a lot of Shriners that basically, I mean, it's plain and simple. You take your oath on the Holy Quran, you're saying Assalamu alaikum to each other, but then you're going online and posting racist stuff against Islam. Like, where's the logic in that?
Well, again, it goes back to that whole narrative, but it's also, you know, you can't be part of the cover-up without knowledge of the cover-up.
Yes.
So if I'm perpetuating a false narrative or a false history or a false ideology, I have to at least have knowledge of the real one.
Yes.
So for many of these people that you speak of, the shrine is a way to keep in mind the real narrative, while turning it and by making play of it and saying it's the playground of Freemasonry. In other words, it's being a mockery. Like, look at what we did to those guys.
And it says that in Surah 5, those that take your religion for a sport, do not make friends with them.
Do not make friends with them. And, you know, and it's the whole, we say it this way, don't, take no, basically it says take no favor, accept no favors from the proud, right? And so it's have enough intelligence to know you're being insulted.
Exactly. Right in plain sight. And they even had I remember watching these old cartoons and these old movies. And these people are wearing the red fezzes with the black face, and I'm like, this is right there in front of them, and they just can't see it.
Can't see it. And again, once again, it's narrative. It's so powerful. Like, let's go back in history.
Mm-hmm.
The whole phobia in the South of Europeans, so-called white people, Europeans, quote unquote African Americans chasing European women, and that being the number one trigger for lynchings and things like that, right?
Yes.
That goes back to some actual history. It goes back, to points in time during the Moorish rule in Spain, where some of the highest priced slaves were the European women. And I mean, the Medici family is a product of that. The Medici dynastic line is a product of that. And what ended up happening, from that perspective, is that a large parts of the Moorish leadership during that time period got bleached out.
Right, right.
And so when the tables turned, you had average individuals. The world, they realized, oh, the world has changed different now. Now you have things like, so as a result of that, you have things like with the so-called quote unquote African American community, the brown paper bag test. If you're darker than the brown paper bag, you're not gonna make it.
Mm.
See, now you've got the whole colorism thing within racism, right?
Mm.
And so you had that whole thing. Well, if you're lighter, you're gonna get by. If you're darker, you got problems, right? But now you're starting to see it in reverse. Now you've got all these models and supermodels. You see, when they're catching them out, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. We thought that you were portraying yourself as quote unquote African American, but wait. Because what are they seeing? They're seeing the social dynamic change back. They're seeing it happen. So now you've got greater amounts of European America looking to us for social recognition.
Absolutely. That is absolutely correct, because now that I'm looking at movies, books, video games, now those original characters that we were supposed to see, because they were, how do you say it? They were portrayed saying that if your skin was not white, you don't fit into that beauty factor.
Right.
But now it's the other way around. Now you look at Vogue magazine, you look at the models that they show you on there, and you see these different characters that are coming up now, and you're
Isn't that
thinking
something?
you know what, Grand Sheikh, you're absolutely right, and it's that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is twisting that table, and it's coming back to its old paradigm.
Yes. And so we're seeing, of course, on the negative side, but it's to be expected, you're seeing pushback.
Naturally.
You're seeing pushback. Even the attacks, which they're true, it's real, overt attacks on the quote unquote Black family structure. What's the purpose? Is it genocide? No. It's to delay the inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna happen. It's just, they're just trying to ride it out a little bit longer, but that's it. That's it. But see, that's also for us too. That means we're so used to limited liability insurance. We can blame the so-called white man. We're used to it, our people in general, that is. Yeah. So now the clock is ticking for us to go from the dead horizontal to the living perpendicular on the square.
Indeed. And that is the ultimate truth, Sheikh. And I thank you for this knowledge that you have bestowed upon us today, which now I move on to, if there's anything that I have not asked you that you wish to address to all of the brothers and sisters that are watching all over the world.
A couple things. One thing in particular, in the Moorish American community, there's a segment of the Moorish American community that has this phobia towards the craft.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's based on ignorance. It's based on ignorance. It's because you see a majority, you see the European psychology permeated through the mindset that it must be a Christian organization. No. No, right? And Prophet Noble Drew Ali, right, through our research, was at one time a member of the organization. He was Freemason and was a member of the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows.
Mm-hmm.
See, and so, he also said this: I'm working on your behalf night and day, in public and in private. When he housed the headquarters at Unity Hall in Chicago, that was powerfully strategic. Why? Because all of the fraternal organizations had offices there too.
Exactly.
So right in one building, you could reach the entire city. all the high rollers and the shot callers and the influential people he could reach from that one location.
Indeed, indeed.
But you got to be able to speak the language to do so.
You know, that's what stood out to me, because I've seen a lot in the Moorish American community where they would say the Freemasons don't give us credit. And I myself, as a Mason,
Yes,
and
sir.
Noble Drew Ali, and all of that truth is there. And I even looked into the question of Jamal al-Afghani, who was a Sufi
Yes,
master who came to Chicago.
that's right.
Now, can you verify that if Jamal al-Afghani, the Sufi master Mason, was able to interact with his parents and plant that seed?
We don't know. There's a lot of
That's why I wanted to
prior
ask you
to
this.
yeah, there's a lot of fairy tale. I'll just say it is. There's a lot of fairy tale regarding, the early life of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. A lot of it. That cannot be verified. A lot of times people just, we have to, it's like using your 24-inch gauge.
Yes, sir.
You got to build correctly. You have to build correctly. You can't, you measure twice and cut once,
Mhm.
and so we have to be that way with research. We have to be responsible.
Yes.
We have to be responsible with it. It's so what do we really know about Noble Drew Ali's background, early, we don't know much at all. And that's just the truth. We don't know much at all. There was a number of years ago, there was very, very strong researcher out of Colorado. His name is Patrick Bowen, good friend of ours. But we met Patrick Bowen because he did a piece on Abdul Hamid Suleiman, and saying that Abdul Hamid Suleiman either founded Canaanite Temple with Drew Ali or taught Drew Ali. Well, we're a research team. So we happen to have, among other things, the interview of the last surviving member of Canaanite Temple that verified things that he didn't know. So we wrote a counter paper to his paper, and that's how we became close friends. So he had to pull back on that statement and say, nah, okay. Because the earliest Abdul Hamid Suleiman can be found in Newark, New Jersey was 1922. Right? We can prove Noble Drew Ali was at 181 Warren Street as early as 1913 in Newark, New Jersey.
Thank you, Grant Sheikh, because we have all of this misinformation that's out there about the life of Prophet Noble Drew Ali.
Yes,
and
sir.
I thank you as a leader and a guide and as a sheikh of the Moorish Science Temple of America that you have on the record. So all of those that are listening, all of those rumors and fallacies that you have heard can now be put to rest. And we have to follow that example.
Yeah, I'll say something else to that really quick. 181 Warren Street was a barbershop and a boarding house above it. The barbershop was owned by James Dixon. James Dixon was Noble Drew Ali's assistant. That was his assistant. And that was in 1913. They met in the barbershop for 3 years. By 1916, there wasn't enough room. So they rented a place. The location now is on Rutgers University in Newark, New Jersey. They rented a place on 12th and Rutgers, and it was a second-story spot, no, a third-story spot above a saloon.
Right.
And that was May 1st, 1916.
That is beautiful, especially with the type of life Prophet Noble Drew Ali has led and through his struggle. And what I was able to get from his teachings, Sheikh, is basically the aspects of unity, discipline, faith in Allah, finding Allah in your heart, sticking together as a community, uplifting each other through education and awareness and through involvement in your community. And, and as time goes on, little by little, even as he had prophesied, that Allah will shift this paradigm, and we're seeing it right before our very eyes.
It's amazing. Like I said, we live in an amazing time. Brother, it's an honor to meet you and to have this discussion with you, and also to drink from your well of wisdom and to hear someone who's not a part of the Moorish American community per se speak about it from your perspective, sincerely, and share with it what you see of it. That's beautiful, brother. That right there is heartwarming for us.
Thank you, Grand Sheikh. And myself coming from the East, I've seen remnants of the Moorish Empire and their descendants, even in Pakistan, where you look at the indigenous Indians, indigenous Pakistanis, they're Moors. Wow. If you go to different parts of the world, you see the indigenous peoples of that land, they're Moors. It's the people here that don't know that they're Moors. And that's exactly where teachers like yourself come in. So myself, not being a part of the Moorish American community, as an outsider from the East, not even from this country, I can tell you that you are a very, very powerful people, and you have to claim that.
This is, brother, the members of the organization and our people in general need to hear that type of thing from our brothers from the East. The Prophet Drew Ali said that this is the uniting of Asia.
Indeed. That is absolutely right, Sheikh. It's been an honor and a privilege on my end. Is there any closing remarks or closing thoughts you would like to leave us with?
Brother, not at all, brother. You gave me a great opportunity. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and just to share with you and just to feel your energy as well, brother. This is amazing.
Brother. Thank you, Grand Sheikh. And I'll also, for the record, I want to give the Grand Sheikh and his temple full rights to this video. So when it's uploaded on my channel, you and yours, as however you wish to download it, distribute it, and upload it, it's all yours. So
thank you so much.
What's mine is yours. And I thank you, Grand Sheikh, for this wisdom. May Allah bless all of you eternally with so much blessings and happiness and success. And for my Moorish American brothers and sisters that are listening, I'm a Freemason. I'm a Sufi Muslim from the East, and I'm here for your cause. So let's get together and let's move forward with the future.
Praise Allah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.